This is something that happened to me when I was 5 years old. I'm 25 today, so it happened a long time ago, but I still remember the incident like it took place yesterday. So yeah, this one morning, my mom dropped me off at the kindergarten at 7:45 in the morning as per usual. Initially, the day went on normally. We did reading, writing, drawing, then had snack at 10:45. We were going to start math, and that's when the administrator came in and she took our teacher out into the hallway. I saw them having a short conversation. The teacher left, then the administrator told us to stay put in the classroom. A few minutes thereafter, a lady whom I had never seen before came into the classroom and told us that she'd be taking care of us until the substitute teacher would arrive. One thing that I should tell you at this point is the size of the kindergarten. It was a small business with only 3 teachers and 1 administrator. The lady who had come to watch us over was actually the new janitor. Also, the substitute teacher was only a part-time worker, thus the reason why she wasn't present in school. Anyhow, the janitor lady told us her name was Nancy. She said something along the line of, "I can't really teach you kids anything you need to learn, just do whatever you want inside the classroom." The kids got busy drawing, playing with toys, and the classroom had all of a sudden become louder and more hectic. For the next 10 minutes, while all the kids were busy doing their own thing, Nancy took a keen interest in me for some reason. She asked me how old I was, if I had siblings, what I liked to do, what my favorite dishes were, and all host of other questions. One of the answers I gave her was pizza. I told her that it was my favorite food. So Nancy asked me, "Hey, do you want to have pizza right now?" To which I nodded yes. Then she added, "Why don't you and I go get some pizza from Tony's and we can surprise all of your friends with delicious goodies. What do you think?" As most kids that age would, I said yes, and she walked me out of the building through the back door. She put me in her car and we were driving to God knows where. Then a few minutes later, Nancy stepped on the gas and I got really scared. It was only a few seconds thereafter that Nancy began really speeding when some other vehicle collided with us and we came to a stop. Just moments after the collision, I saw Mom grab Nancy by the hair, then she dragged her out of the vehicle. Seconds later, Mom pulled out the keys from the ignition, opened the rear door, and she took me in her arms. That's how things happened from my perspective, so let me now explain to you the actual sequence of events. Nancy is an ex-girlfriend of my dad's. Dad was in a relationship with her a couple of years before he married Mom. Apparently, Nancy wasn't quite ready to accept the breakup, and so she continued to monitor Dad's life from afar for 7 years. I don't know what drove Nancy to abduct me after all those years. She wouldn't say it in court, and I heard she pleaded the fifth throughout the entire proceedings. I can't say for sure, but I think she either wanted to kill me or maybe she thought that taking me would bring back my dad into her life. Regardless, Mom was able to intervene by pure chance. She was going out for lunch and she says that she saw me playing in the backseat of a stranger's car. She's right, I was standing on the seat and playing with a toy truck while Nancy was driving. Mom tells me that she feared she might hurt me if she rammed the car to a stop, but she didn't have a choice. It was either that or she might possibly lose me forever. Thankfully, Mom was driving Dad's pickup truck on that day. Her car was in the shop and Dad was picked up by a friend of his. Ramming a Toyota Corolla into some parked vehicles wasn't easy work for the Ford F-350. That's how she saved me. Mom was brave, decisive, and she had the right weapon for the job. I feel thankful to her every day that I wake up to live another day. She's truly my hero, my own Captain America, and I love her with every ounce of my being. In 2012, I was 17 years old and still in high school. At the time, I was the president of the Digital Media Club in school. I had been a member since the second semester in my freshman year. and it was honestly the only thing that I liked about schooling in general. One perk that I enjoyed the most as being the president of the club was the ability to stay in the club room even after the school schedule is finished. I'd often stay behind until 6 p.m. when Lorenzo, the nicest school security guard in the world, punches out for the day. I would usually help him secure the doors and stuff. He was a real good dude. Anyhow, one day after school, I was cleaning, testing, and playing around with some audio gears and a new camera that the school had purchased recently. At some point, I was recording a test footage when Lorenzo dropped by and asked me if I wanted some coffee. He used to always bring a couple of thermos filled with Joe. He finished one bottle during school hours, and the other was for after all the students left the school. That's the bottle that he would always share with me, and I would often return the favor with a bag of biscuits or breadsticks. That being said, we chatted for about 10 minutes and then Lorenzo left to do his thing. As soon as he walked out, I remembered that I left the camera running. I pressed record, Lorenzo came by, and I had forgotten to turn the camera off. I was about to cancel the recording, but then I saw something through the LCD screen mounted on the camera. You see, the door that Lorenzo had left open was closing on its own. I instinctively looked up to see it directly, and sure enough, I saw the door shut itself close with the emphasis of the click sound made by the door mechanism. I scrubbed through the timeline, then watched the footage again. There was no one pushing or pulling the door shut. It was moving on its own. So next, what I did was to review the entire 10-minute footage while Lorenzo was present in the club room. Throughout the 10-minute footage, I saw the door swing on its own quite a few times. It never swung completely in one direction or the other, at least not until Lorenzo stepped out, but it was definitely moving on its own. I brought Lorenzo back into the club room, then showed him the footage of the door. I thought he'd be freaked out, but he was so nonchalant about the whole thing. What happened was Lorenzo had seen similar things happen many times over in the 12 years that he had worked in the school. He told me that he calls the spirit or spirits the helping hand. He calls them that because it or they never leave any doors open by the time he goes around the classroom to check on the doors. As it turns out, many teachers forget to close the doors of their classroom, and it falls on Lorenzo to make sure they're shut. He told me that he was very fearful of them when he first started working for the school, but that with time, it became obvious to him that they weren't some vengeful beings. I guess he was right, seeing as how Lorenzo still works for the school, and is still the same wonderful dude I met all those years ago. I came back to my hometown after college, and I get to chat with Lorenzo quite often during weekdays. We go to the same diner to have lunch. He tells me that the helping hand, or hands for that matter, are still present in school and they're still as helpful as ever. I guess not all spirits are spooky after all. I was in college when this incident took place. I was walking to my dorm building and saw a guy wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap seated on a bench roughly about 20 yards from the dorm. I personally don't feel comfortable being near a stranger who wears a garment that covers a big portion of their face. It's not about who wears it, be it a man, a woman, or you could be a Martian for all I care. An open face, faced up and straight posture means you're open to the world. Like it or not, body language says a lot about a person, and what you wear heavily dictates your body language. But let's go back to the night of the incident. I was about to enter my building when I heard a girl scream for help, and right away I knew it had something to do with the guy in the hoodie. I turned around and saw a girl being dragged by a guy in the hoodie. I stood there frozen for about 2 seconds, but then I don't know what came over me, but I was already running toward the girl. The girl being dragged was fighting. She was not gonna make it easy for the kidnapper, which also meant she gave me more time to catch up to them. Right before I got to the girl, I saw the guy kicking her in the face, shoulder, and her chest. The girl curled up on the ground in severe pain. I grabbed her by her jacket, then came the inevitable kick to my face. The guy had the perfect angle for the kick since I had to get low to get a good hold of the girl being taken. Surprisingly, I didn't feel any pain. I was actually dazed and seeing stars fly around me. Even so, I didn't let go of the girl, and I also felt her grab onto me. Then came the barrage of kicks and punches from the guy, and they were mostly landing on my face. The mission was to get me off the girl so he could take her against her will. I think a good half a minute of punishment had been dished, and I could feel myself getting weaker by the second. That's when I heard the most beautiful sound that I had ever had the pleasure of listening. It was literally male human beings shouting, "Hey, get off them!" followed by the sound of multiple footsteps getting louder. Right away, the perpetrator ran off, and I heard one of the guys giving chase yell out an instruction saying, "Michael, you stay here with them." Then I saw two guys go after the kidnapper, while presumably Michael, he stayed behind and asked us if we were okay. I said to him, "No, but I think I feel better than a second ago." Then I don't know why, but we all started to laugh. Not only was what I said ridiculous, but I think we were all so relieved that the situation was semi-resolved. Minutes later, school security showed up and they told us that the guys who gave chase had caught the abductor. The creep was now in the custody of school security. By the way, the kidnapper is still serving time in prison. He got 15 years for the whole shebang, so he'll be back out in the world in about 10 years. As for the girl who was targeted, she was actually the ex-girlfriend of the creep. You know how it goes. A girl breaks up with a guy, the guy can't accept it, and he decides to do the dumbest thing he could have ever done in his life. This happens sometimes. Lastly, the guys who saved us, they are Michael, Peter, and Clint. They became my best of best friends after the incident and will still keep in touch on a regular basis. I remember I told them one time that I thought they were the bravest people I had ever met. In their response, they told me that their courage was not even comparable to what it took to do what I had done that night. Yeah, I know, I'm showing off a little, but they told me that and it felt real good. The end. Back in my sophomore year in high school, I had the dumbest science teacher the world had ever seen. Let me explain. Firstly, he was lazy. For the start of every class, he used to write the topic of the day on the blackboard, then refused to write anything else for the rest of the class. Secondly, he refused to use the official textbook. He actually got his teaching assignments from science websites. We basically learned useless things. Thirdly, he used half of the period to talk about himself. In spite of his blatant shortcomings as a teacher, he actually thought very highly of himself. Now that I've made the teacher's incompetence clear to you, I think you might understand why I had to speak to my guidance counselor about the issue. Half of the semester was already wasted, and I wasn't about to waste the rest of the semester learning about Mr. Barrow's college adventures. That's not his real last name, by the way, but let's just call him that for now. In any event, after speaking to the guidance counselor, the issue got elevated to the principal, and the rumor was that Mr. Barrow had been reprimanded. Even so, the man continued teaching, and nothing really changed after that. Then it was toward the end of the semester, and of course, I had already given up on the class. I actually did homework from earlier classes while I attended the science class. I thought it was a much better use of my time. One day, after the school had ended, Mr. Barrow found me as I was walking out of my last class. He took me into his classroom and said to me, "I know it was you who talked shit about my class." I was going to cut him off and say something unpleasant, but Barrow jumped in and whisper shouted, "You know very well that I'm formerly a cop. I know how to use the system to make any average Joe and Jane's life miserable. You don't wanna fuck with me, bitch. You pull a stunt like that again the next semester, I'm gonna make sure you spend the rest of your life in a hospital bed if you're lucky. You be smart to remember that. Before we proceed, let's make one thing clear. I've got nothing against the police. That's kinda obvious when you consider the fact that my brother's a police officer in Chicago. Barrow, the idiot, just happens to be a former cop, and that was all there was to it. We got bad people in all places and positions. Let us not make this political. But back to the story. I was a little taken aback, but I wasn't scared of Barrow. So I told him to eat feces and to love his mama. I could tell that shook him a little, and all of a sudden he went, I gave him the middle finger and walked out of the classroom. A few minutes thereafter, I was in the parking lot and walking toward my car. I thought about speaking to my guidance counselor about the confrontation, but I thought, what good did that do the last time? Nah, this time I was going to talk to my parents and brother about it and probably press charges against Barrow. I drove my car toward the exit of the school parking lot, and just as I was about to pull out onto the road, I heard a loud engine noise, felt my body being thrown against the side window, followed by the airbags deploying. Then all I could hear was the continuous sound of beep, exactly like you hear before an emergency broadcast. Barrow had rammed his SUV against my car. I was barely coherent, but something inside of me kept telling me that I was still in danger. I somehow got out of the car and quite literally began to drag my body away from the mangled Civic. As I was crawling away, I heard the sound of a car trunk being shut. I turned my head to look, and it was Barrow walking toward me with a baseball bat in his hand. I thought I was good as dead, but God was on my side on that day. Right before the collision, a police car was by pure chance parked on the other side of the street. Just moments after the ramming, the police cruiser was already pulling up near me to take charge of the situation. As soon as the police officer saw Barrow, he jumped out of his cruiser, shouted something to Barrow, then he tased the moron into oblivion. Barrow was arrested on sight, I was taken to the hospital, and the rest was a long court proceedings. As it turned out, Barrow had been fired by the police department some years before he became a teacher. Let's just say that there were one too many complaints from the people whom he had arrested, and the police rightfully fired the moron. Barrow is currently serving a 21-year sentence. He'll be in his 60s by the time he gets out of prison. As we speak, and as he's serving time right now, I hope he gets, and will continue to get what's coming to him. If there's anyone who deserves that sweet prison justice, it's Barrow. In our school, we have this story about a ghost that's been passed down from the older generations. The high school was established in the late 1800s, so it's got a rich history. Anyhow, the story is about a boy and a girl who are in love. The girl hailed from a wealthy family, and the boy from a rather average family. Long story short, the girl's father found out about their relationship, he forced them to end it, and the girl took her own life out of sorrow. You know, the classic love story from the past. Although the girl is the victim in the story, we call her Dreadful Mildred because to us, she's just a scary ghost. I personally know about a dozen people who swear they saw Mildred roaming the school grounds. I was not one of them for the 2.5 years that I attended the school, but all of that changed just a month ago from today. There was this one day that I stayed in school after all the classes had ended. I wasn't in any trouble. My guidance counselor wanted to speak to me about the classes I was taking and ultimately help me plan for the next semester. I spoke to her, then went to the restroom before leaving the school. The hallways were a bit spooky since most of the lights are turned off after the students leave. Anyway, I did my business, and as soon as I stepped out of the restroom, I was overcome with this feeling that I was being watched by someone or something. I turned my head to the left and saw a girl wearing a dress that looked very much retro. I knew right away that she had to be Mildred. So next, I turned my body toward the opposite direction, then proceeded to haul ass toward the exit. I had to turn a corner to go to the main gate, which is located right smack in the middle of the school building. And when I did, I saw Mildred again, seemingly waiting for me to go to her. I was not going to do that. I turned around again, and this time I was going to go back into the guidance counselor's office. As soon as I turned the corner again, I saw Mildred only a few feet in front of me, and I fell flat on my butt. Down on my butt, I retreated as quickly as I could. Mildred followed, but suddenly she disappeared into thin air. Moments later, I screamed from the top of my lungs. Something had touched my shoulder, and then I heard my math teacher say, "Sonny, it's just me. What happened to you?" I lied to her and said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Dabney. I thought I saw something, but I was mistaken." I was embarrassed. I really looked ridiculous. So I got up and was about to leave when Mrs. Dabney said to me, "She just likes to spook people. She doesn't harm anyone. Go home, relax in a bath, and forget about what happened today. You'll be fine." As a response, I smiled at her awkwardly, then proceeded to exit the school building. I haven't seen Mildred again after that, but that may have something to do with the fact that I don't go anywhere alone in school. I haven't even used the restroom pass ever since. I am so looking forward to graduation. My neighborhood gets real quiet at nights. I live in the suburbs and our tallest buildings stop at 2 floors max, so life is slow, quiet, and real peaceful around here. My daytime schedule has been kind of hectic ever since I quit my job. After my husband and I had our third child, it had become clear that one of us had to stay home, so I volunteered. I love my husband. I lucked out with a real good man. The thing is though, I could never trust him to run the household in top shape. Dan's a hard-working man and he does everything that a father/husband is responsible for. However, a mother, he is not. Due to my new responsibilities, I get to have my own time from the hours of 7 p.m. through 8:30. Dan comes home after work at around 4:30. He takes a real quick shower, then helps the kids with their homework, does chores around the house to eventually he joins me in making dinner. At 7 p.m. I go to the gym, then at 8 I walk in my neighborhood for about half an hour. What I'm about to tell you happened during that time, during the half hour of my daily walk. It took place only a few days ago, so I still remember everything clearly. It was around 8:10 at night, so about 10 minutes into the walk. I was listening to an audiobook through the earbuds, so I wasn't paying much attention to the outside noises. That is, until the sound of an animal's cry leaked in through the earbuds. I heard about a coyote attack some days ago, so I quickly paused the audiobook, then took off the earbuds. I got scared and was about to go back home when the sound came back and I realized that it wasn't from an animal. It was actually a baby crying. It was only then that I realized that a stroller was in the middle of the road some 25 yards ahead of me with no adult looking after it. I panicked like any mother would. I ran after it as though my own child was in danger. Every second that I ran felt like minutes, and the cries of the baby made me feel even more desperate. Granted, our neighborhood barely gets any traffic, but at nights the roads get really dark, the streetlights are few and far between, and are not as bright as the ones in the city. So of course I was desperate to get to the baby ASAP. Anyhow, I got to the stroller, grabbed the handle, moved it onto the sidewalk, then went around it to check on the baby. As soon as I saw the front end of the stroller, I ran toward the opposite direction like I had seen a ghost. I ran because of not what I saw, but because of what I didn't see. There was no baby inside. Once I arrived home, I told my husband to go check on the stroller by the sidewalk. He did, and when he came back, he told me that there wasn't any stroller at the place where I told him to check. He actually told me that some kids must have pulled a prank on me with a Bluetooth speaker, which was plausible at the time but unlikely looking back at it now. You see, I was once a child as well, and to top it off, I had two brothers growing up. I know for a fact that when boys play a prank and it happens to work, the prank doesn't stop at just one time. No, they do it until you get sick of it. I spoke to my neighbors about it and no one had been pranked in the same manner. Not to mention, the prank hadn't been repeated on me either. I wish it was a prank, but I don't believe it was. What makes it even more creepy is that a family had actually lost a baby a few months back. I believe she had died from suffocation. It was an accident. I feel really bad for the baby, of course, but honestly, it really sucks that I can no longer walk at nights. We've got a treadmill in the basement, but that's a problem as well. I am now scared to go to the basement. We love this neighborhood, but I think we have to move if I am to stay sane. It was in the middle of summer last year. I was solo camping in the woods and it had been 2 days since I had settled in the same spot. The time was about 8 p.m. and I had a fire going at my campsite. I believe I was having a chicken tikka masala when a stranger appeared from the woods and he had scared the crap out of me. The stranger apologized and explained himself. He told me that he lost his way in the woods and wasn't able to find his campsite. So basically, when he saw fire from afar, he knew that the source of the fire would likely have a person nearby. Anyhow, the guy's name was Michael, and he was kind of new to the whole camping scene. After listening to what he had to say, I told him that he could use my spare sleeping bag and that I would help him get back to his campsite the next morning. I also offered him dinner, but he said he wasn't hungry, which was weird seeing as how he had been lost for some 5 hours. I don't know, but I think I would have been hungry if I were him. But yeah, I continued with my dinner and we just chatted about life and stuff for a while. After dinner, I grabbed a cigar and offered one to Michael as well. Michael said no thank you, then I turned my body toward my bag that was on the ground to my left so I could reach in to grab my Zippo. I grabbed it and when I turned around again, Michael was gone. I heard no footsteps and it took maybe 2 seconds to grab the lighter. In no way should he have been able to walk away from the camp that quietly and that fast. But somehow, he did. I didn't see Michael ever again after that. My buddies tell me half-jokingly that I must have seen a ghost of some camper who must have gotten lost and died. I laugh about it in front of them, but not so much on the inside. Call me superstitious all you want, but I think they're right. What I saw that night wasn't a person. It was a ghost.